Hey, okay. Welcome everyone. As usual, I always start with microphone problems. Today's an extra special day because I didn't have a chance to take a shower after the gym, so I smell wonderful. Good thing they haven't invented smell-o-vision yet. Smell streaming with Eric Keller. So, I'm going to stink up this place with a little talk of insects as usual. And let's see, I'm just getting all my stuff ready here. And let's get it on. So, if you've been following, then you know I've been working on this Longhorn Beetle. I spent some time on the head last week doing the eyes. Getting a nice compound eye in there. Check that out. And we're going to continue working on the head and the antenna today, getting in some detail and also maybe some legs. And it's starting to take shape. We got the basic forms going here. We're almost ready to start doing some ZRemeshing and adding some detail. So I usually just do, part at a time and bring it up to a certain level, then work on another part and just keep going subtool by subtool until it's done. And then I'm ready to actually do some poly painting. So let me get some reference imagery up here. Let's get the right reference imagery. And I have my information down here. I have my website and my Instagram and my YouTube channel. So if you DM me and follow me on Instagram and let me know if you're interested in getting these reference images for yourself, just let me know. All the photographs here are photographs I've taken myself. They're nothing great, nothing special, but they are a nice reference. But if you'd like to get a copy of these, I'm happy to share them. Just follow me on Instagram, follow me on YouTube, send me an instant message. A direct message, instant message. I just dated myself there. A direct message on Instagram, and let me know where I can send you a link to Dropbox, and you can download these guys. And I'll talk about some of the other things later on. But let's get going, and let's take a look at the head here. I was working on the mouth parts last week. So maybe we should focus on the antenna a little bit. Here's the mouth bar. It's nice and grizzly. Pretty gross. Let's start working on dialing in the shape here for the antenna. And let me get my reference in shape here. That's actually kind of a nice shot right there. And I have to get my supplies going here. Cheers. So, let's start by splitting this up into some subtools here. I've already got polygroups on this thing. If we take a look at how these are segmented, these look like they're kind of like cups for the antenna, kind of typical. Insect antenna comes in all shapes and sizes. If you want to see some real variety, take a look at the difference between like a beetle antenna and fly antenna. You see there's a huge difference there. In fact, I think I still have my insect heads in this project. Yeah, so if we take a look at the variety of insect antenna, like a typical mantis, you've got sort of like base right here, this kind of cup type job, a longer segment, and then it kind of goes into sort of like little balls, whereas here we have sort of like cups. That is part of that right there is a blind cockroach, has no eyes, but you can see how its antennas are arranged in sort of these little segmented cups. And then if we take a look at, say, mosquito, you see you have the long elongated segments right here. Let's take a look at typical ant. This right here, I believe, is Solenopsis invicta, aka the red army ant. Sorry, the red fire ant. So you can see it has a very long segment right here, and then shorter segments with kind of a pointy bit. These things are usually covered with hair too. And I'm forgetting my antenna terminology. But let's take a look. There's another ant, so you can see that one's kind of similar. And also there's a honeybee right here, also similar arrangement. But the fly, on the other hand, is really different, radically different. So you can see with the fly antenna, you have this type of deal. Very strange, and these are usually very covered in a lot of hair. And then if we take a look, this is another type of fly. This is a phorid fly, and it has these very large bulbous sections with just a few segments right here, not very long. So, point being, lots of variety in different antennas. I don't have the typical beetle, which, you know, you have these beetles that have kind of like a long, kind of fluttery type things. It's just I haven't gotten around to modeling one of those yet. Here's a good one right here. This is another type of beetle. It's a scarab beetle, but you can see this antenna. We have a segment right here, and then these very short cups with these large bits right here. And this is also coming from underneath the shield of the head. So it's like it's coming out from underneath, which is kind of wild. So, and you know, insects are very diverse. You have this is a damselfly, often confused for a dragonfly. Very small antenna, not much there. Here's a dragonfly with even tinier antenna, almost nothing. They're mostly sensed by sight. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to our longhorn beetle. And give me just a second, I'll be right back. Okay. So, let's see if I can get a good shot of longhorn beetle. And this looks like it has very long segments. So we have, yeah, extremely long segments. They have a little bulbous end right here, and that's how they connect. Let's see where I had that one reference right here. That's pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to start making some polygroups here, and then I'm going to do a Dynamesh with groups on, and that'll separate it into separate pieces. So Control W to make a polygroup there. Control W. And then let's start with that. And then there's going to be kind of a bulbous part at the very beginning here. So let's get the inflate brush going. Do a little inflate right there. Control W. And then let's do. And I'm just going to create one polygroup for the rest of these. I'll worry about the segments later. So what I might do is, let's do this. We go geometry, Dynamesh. Let's increase the resolution a little bit. Turn the groups on. Control, drag, and release. And then you can see that creates a separation here. So now these are closed. And as I smooth them, the resolution might be a bit high, but that's okay. Let's lower the resolution a little bit. There we go. I'll make it a little bit faster. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control Shift click on this so you can see that now we have the long parts of the antenna, and I'm going to go into the subtool palette and do a group split, or split hidden rather, not group split. Split hidden, and that way I have a subtool now for the base of the antenna and a subtool for the longer parts. So I'm going to worry about the longer parts later and just focus on these right now. I do a little bit of both when talking about reference planes. So I used to use Spotlight a lot. That's where you take a texture, like let's say I take this texture right here and I add it to Spotlight, and it kind of is above my model. And this is kind of nice because you can position it around on the screen. You just have to remember to go into the brush settings and go into samples and turn off Spotlight projection. That way you can have the reference here, press Z, and then still sculpt on it without this interfering with your sculpting. And then of course I often, and I believe I do have it on here, you can see I have a image plane here on the back on the grid, which right at this point I'm starting to kind of deviate from, but that's okay. And I'll use that when I'm working on the basic proportions. But I also, as you can see, I like Pure Ref a lot. Pure Ref is, you know, one of my favorites, as long as I don't lose it. Where did it go? Pure Ref, there we go. The only problem with Pure Ref, I'll stick it in the corner here, and then it'll do one of these things where it keeps changing size as I'm trying to zoom in and stuff. That's pretty good. So I kind of use a combination of all of them. Waiting for you to stream. Since you do a lot of micro detail, I'm wondering if you have any advice on creating bone detail, the brittle feel. I mean, yeah, you know, if you're talking about bones, here's a trick that I did because I've had to do a few of those for some projects. So here's something you can try. If you have access to Megascans, which is part of, you know, Epic. You know, you can get an account, and they have, it's worth getting an account for Megascans. I think it might be free with an Epic account, depends. But they have a lot of really cool bone scans on there that also have textures, right? And they're pretty decent realistic. And what you can do is you can load those up, take their textures and convert the texture into polypaint, and then use the extract brush to literally extract the polypaint and the detail and turn that into a brush that you can then use on your own surfaces. So you can make a whole bunch of different bone brushes, and that's kind of a great way to do it quickly. So, whoops, I didn't want to open that. So I hope that makes some kind of sense, but this is something I had to do for a job. So when I talk about the extract brushes, I'm talking about these right here. So let me show you. I don't think I have any bones on this particular computer right here, but that's one way to do it. Also, surface noise is your friend, or you could use Spotlight projection to get some high resolution images of bones, and you can project through Spotlight onto your surface and get some nice detail that way. But you know, bones are they're a lot of fun to sculpt because they're all this cracks design, sort of flaky bits, and you know what I mean, and the colors and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, if you can get scans of stuff through the Smithsonian, that's a great idea. Yeah, you can use those through Spotlight, or you can use the extractor brush. Those are good ways to get bones started. And then of course on top of that, you'll probably want to do some actual sculpting to improve it, so you're getting rid of, you know, things like specular highlights and JPEG artifacts and all that kind of stuff. But if you get really high resolution images, that's a good way to get a bone started. I hope that's helpful. Okay, so now let's take a look. I keep moving my reference. Okay, so we have sort of this kind of deal right here. And let's take the SK cloth and just start to build up this part a little bit. I'm just working on this right here, and then I'll go get the clay tubes. It's funny. I've been teaching ZBrush for many years. I taught at the Gnomon School for many years. One of my students is Louis Tucci, who you guys probably know from ZBrush Live events. And he's actually teaching Intro to ZBrush at Gnomon right now. So he was once the learner, but now he's the master. But only a master of evil. And but the reason I bring this up is because I get so used to saying, and I record a lot of videos and that kind of thing. I get so used to narrating everything that I'm doing that I feel like I might be doing it while I'm by myself, just working alone now. I don't know. It's kind of a weird habit. I was in the Pixelogic office over the weekend, the one that's in the Gnomon School in Hollywood, right above the right above the Gnomon Gallery, working on filming scenes for John Brown's extravaganza movie, sci-fi movie, Black Rose. So that was kind of fun. Let's just do this right here. What's the longest I spent on a sculpt? Well, the more you sculpt, the faster you get. So when I was first starting out, it could take me this Beetle is taking me a long time only because I'm doing it just during the live stream and not working off it offline. But insects used to take me like a week or so to do. Now I could probably, if I'm pressed for it, I could knock one out in a few days. If I have like scan data, it could be even faster. But it's hard to say what's the longest you spend on a sculpt because you're talking about longest with client changes, and clients change everything all the time. So that's something that, of course, eats into a lot of time. But I don't know. It used to take me. Now I could do a decent model in a few days. Complete with poly painting and all that kind of stuff. But it used to take me maybe like a week or so to do a good bug. Good insect. Of course, the best way to get faster is to promise to do a deadline that you can't keep. Yeah, I need to check out those Smithsonian catalogs. I actually taught a couple online classes to some of the artists at the Smithsonian, which was a lot of fun. They were doing a lot of 3D printing. They're really good artists. They know how to do art. They just need to learn how to use ZBrush to make high quality prints. But that was a lot of fun. There's some really cool artists working there, and they come from a variety of different backgrounds. A little bit jealous because I'd love to work there, but of course, I moved from DC to Los Angeles, so that's not going to happen now. Let's see. I'm going to... Okay, so that's a really good question. I currently, at this time in my career, I have my own office, a studio at home, and that's where I do a lot of my work. I work with, post-COVID, of course, I think everybody's like this, and I've even worked for like The Mill and other studios, all at my home studio, doing everything online. Some people really don't like that. They like to have colleagues around. Personally, I like to work in solitude, especially when things go wrong. So right now, a lot of my work for studios involves a lot of Slack, a lot of Zoom, and a lot of constant communication, which can be cool, but also a bit frustrating because, everybody has different schedules. And I also work with people who are all over the world, so... I've worked with people who are in like New Zealand, different time zones, Europe, and all that kind of stuff. And that could be a little bit challenging. When I worked at the planetarium show here in Los Angeles at the Griffith Observatory, which was one of the most fun projects I've ever worked on. That one I actually worked on site at a studio, and it was kind of cool because the actual studio was just this little innocuous mobile home, not mobile home, but temporary structure right next to the LA Zoo. And there's probably like 15 of us or so working in there, IT, producers, directors, CG artists. And we also had a little mini planetarium in there, so we'd have to watch dailies on this little planetarium that was a little bit smaller than the room I'm in now. And we'd sit in there with lawn chairs and watch our shots and on the dome, because working on in Maya or ZBrush or whatever, and then seeing it on the dome is a very different experience. And then once a week, we'd actually drive up to the big dome at Griffith Observatory and watch the shots on the big dome, which was also a lot of fun. And that was 2018 to 2020. That was the last studio that I worked on site for. Everything I've done since 2020 has been here in the home studio, and that's obviously mostly because of COVID. I don't know if that answers your question, but personally, I like to work alone for a bit, as long as I have clear instructions. The worst part about working alone is you can start going off in the wrong direction and not know it until it's too late. The one thing you don't want to do when you're working is try and get something absolutely perfect, spend days on something without letting anybody know, and then showing it and saying, here it is, it's done, and suddenly realizing that you've been doing exactly the wrong thing. You want to show things as often as possible. Anytime something's even remotely presentable, even if doesn't look great, you want to make sure that you're going in the right direction. And because I've had problems in that area as recently as, I don't know, this afternoon. It's like, it's amazing when you have a meeting and everybody thinks that they're on the same page, and you go off and do your work and come back to show it, and you suddenly realize, no, that's not what they meant at all. It's not always your fault, of course. Sorry, that was an eye roll there. The other thing that's tough is working on motion graphics, because motion graphics is a completely different mindset than visual effects. And I come more from a visual effects background, meaning I like good topology, I like good UVs, I like high quality textures, I like good models that are really solid. Whereas motion graphics, it's like fast food. You just whip up stuff as fast as possible. It only has to look good from that one camera angle, or whatever the camera angle is, and if it can look like total garbage from every other angle, and that's fine, because you had to do this stuff so incredibly fast, and sometimes it's not always easy if you're coming from a visual effects background. Again, my experience in this is as recent as today, so I'm a little bit I'm complaining to you guys about it, but whatever, it's all good. At the end of the day, it's it's money. I think there is the impression that you get from, if you read articles and talk to people in the industry, you get the idea that there's this one pipeline that everybody in the world follows, and it's been established on high from day one, and that's just not true. The pipeline is completely dependent on the studio and on the personalities of the people in the studio. And so I've worked at places that are complete chaos. I've worked at places that were very organized and neat. The planetarium show was incredibly well organized. We had 2 producers on there, and they were just amazing. Like, you always knew what you were working on. You always had the schedule. You knew what you had to do for that day. A lot of meetings, but at the end, it was good. And then there's other jobs where it's just complete freaking chaos, and that could be fun in some respects and really not fun in others, Okay, let's, so if we're looking at this from this angle, you can see that these little balls that I've been working on are not really all that visible. So but I do know that they're there because you can see them right here. So I need to adjust their angle a bit so that it actually matches. So you can see they're right here on this beetle. This is a different species, but you can sort of see that they are there. I just need to adjust them correctly. Let's see if I can get a better view here. Here we go. They're really kind of tucked in there. I mean, you can see the edge. There we go. You can see the edge right there. So I'm not smoking crack. They do exist. They're just really buried. I am drinking beer though. Good managers is just one of the it's the difference between a nightmare job and something that's actually fun that you look forward to going to. Whoops, I'm doing this wrong. It should be more out here. And I've spent way too much time on this little blob already. Oh well. It's just for fun tonight, right? Yeah, the texturing process is definitely, if you have a solid model, then it's, yeah, I think you're exactly right. Nice detail, good topology, good UVs, and texturing is actually, it's like putting icing on the cake, you know, it's a nice, tasty, fun process. You get a bad model, it's a nightmare. Bad UVs, oh my God. And that's the thing, it's like some jobs you work with, I'm not making fun of motion graphics artists, I swear, but they want to project everything. They don't want UVs, they just want to do projection. I was like, I don't want to do projection, man. Okay. I think I've killed that one enough. Okay, so let's bring this over here. We have a little bit of a bend there. Once I get this into a certain place, I'll do like a quick ZRemesh, which will make it easier to dial in the detail. I'm on the West Coast, so I'm not enjoying the cicada revolution right now, but if anybody else is on the East Coast and they're lucky enough to be surrounded by this massive brood of hatches, I'm very jealous of what you're going through. Personally, I love the sound of cicadas. Used to go to Greece a lot, and there are always cicadas going on in Greece, and that's what it reminds me of, you know. Pine trees and all that kind of stuff. The sound of cicadas in the summer, I think it's a wonderful sound. The other really cool insect event that's going on right now that I'm completely missing, you guys have probably heard about it, is the fireflies in the Great Smoky Mountains here in the United States. This time of year they do this synchronous display where at a certain time at night they will all start to blink completely in sync. We're talking about thousands and thousands of fireflies all blinking on and off at the exact same time. I've never seen it, but I hear it's such a spectacle that if you want to go and see it, you have to reserve like years in advance, and even then it's a lottery, so you may or may not get to go, at least from what I understand. I think there are some other people that do get to reserve, because I think some friends of mine were planning a trip there, but I couldn't make it for whatever reason. But that's like a once in a lifetime experience. That's entomologist aurora borealis plus eclipse times 1,000. There's a really cool book on fireflies, Silent Sparks. Beautiful book, wonderful photographs, just really well written and enjoyable to read, and you learn all about the biology of different fireflies from around the world, because there are many different species. There are fireflies here in California, but they don't glow. That's the thing. Is basically, from what I understand, and if you're a firefly expert, hopefully I won't get this wrong, but from what I understand, the idea of this bioluminescent signal, and of course, bioluminescence happens in lots of different places in nature. It's not that uncommon. But in the case of the fireflies, the idea was the glowing happened when they were underground. They're beetles, basically. They're a type of beetle. And originally, it's thought that it was sort of evolved from co-opting a defense mechanism, right? So you guys know that various bright colored insects use their coloration as a warning to predators that basically says to the predators, hey, I taste really, really bad. You probably don't want to eat me. And the predators learn through experience or through, some kind of innate instinct to avoid brightly colored insects for this reason, right? So think of like a monarch butterfly as a good example. Monarch butterflies taste terrible, and they have this bright coloration. So eventually, as the beetles, over time, this bioluminescent quality is something that they started to use when they're above ground and when they're flying, and it sort of went from a defense mechanism, which it still kind of is, into a mating signal. So basically, fireflies are blinking at night because they're trying to attract mates. And they're telling their mates, hey, I'm over here. And each species of firefly has their own signal pattern. It's like Morse code. You can actually learn the signals of various fireflies, and I think there's even apps for your phone that you can imitate the signal if you want to attract a particular type of species. Of course, you're really going to disappoint a poor firefly by doing that and ruin its evening. I mean, how would you like it if somebody was like coming on to you and you found out, oh, it's not really a beautiful woman or a handsome boy, it's an alien who wants to look at me? That'd be very disappointing. But anyways, I digress. So it's actually a mating signal, which is kind of cool. What sparked my interest for insects is I've always been a fan of biology. I started doing CG actually originally as a scientific animator for the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, which is an actual place, believe it or not. And I was doing, before I did Hollywood stuff, I was doing a lot of cell biology and that kind of thing. And I also have a love for robots. And I was working on a job around 2012 for E.O. Wilson, who's a famous entomologist. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. All right, I got a little issue here, so I'm going to re-dynamesh. Let's lower the resolution a little bit. And I was working on these bug models, and it just kind of dawned on me that insects were the perfect blend of all the things that I love. You got your biology, there's a lot of cell biology involved in studying insects, but they're also nature's robots, right? But they also combine organic modeling with kind of like hard surface modeling in a way. It's not as precise as, say, modeling a Porsche or something like that, but they do have these kind of robotic parts to them, as you can see from what I'm modeling right now, and I found that really fun. And then there's also a lot of diversity in insects. It's like I was showing with the head, there's so many different things to explore. I mean, I like character modeling a lot, but human anatomy is human anatomy. You've got basically two flavors that you need to master, male and female, in terms of anatomy, and everybody's doing that kind of thing, right? It's a very crowded space to do character sculpting. And as much as I love it, I'm like, what can I do that sets me apart from other CG artists? And that's when I kind of realized, oh, insects are great. There's not a lot of people doing insects, or not a lot of people devoting a huge amount of time to doing bugs. So it's a nice area to explore. It's kind of a niche. But the other thing, yes, catfishing fireflies, it definitely happens. The other thing that I love about bugs is when you animate them, when you rig them, rigging is easy because you don't have to paint skin weights, right? You're not dealing with trying to make sure that the bicep, the skin on the bicep is perfectly bound to the joint, and you got all these blend shapes and blah 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 and all that stuff just to get one limb to deform correctly when you rig it. You just stick a joint in there for each segment, skin this to a joint, blanc, you're done. You know what I mean? So that was very attractive to me because I wanted to get to the animating part, and I didn't want to spend all my time painting skin weights. When I started doing CG, it was a really long time ago, so we didn't have the auto rigging and all that kind of stuff that we do now. All we had was a potato and a bag of screws. That's all we had to use to rig. Oh, sorry, a little dog just walked in. So it was a bit tricky. Okay, I'm going to do this. This right here is looking kind of like a mess, and I've got a lot of geometry I don't need. So I'm kind of just doodling right now. So normally when I work quite a bit faster than this, but the whole point of the live stream is just to have fun, right? Okay, so let's take this, and so, we don't have all the detail in here. It's still kind of like marshmallows, but that's okay. I think this is a good point to, first of all, save, right? And then I'm going to ZRemesh it and kind of sculpt in some, because I like some of this sharp detail. And take a look at this. That's this right here. This needs to be more of a straight up cylinder with kind of a bend right there, and then this has to be a bit sharper. Yeah, mushrooms are fantastic. They're a favorite subject as well. They're just so much fun. And we're just starting to really learn about them too. My darling Irene is an expert in mushrooms and also botany, and she likes insects too. She's a really fantastic person and a wonderful artist, and she's also watching this live stream, so okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ZRemesh. Let's take a look here. We got our poly groups on, so I want to make sure that I have, let's keep groups. Another trick we can do just to kind of help, cheap and easy way to help guide the topology of the ZRemesh is I'm going to paint a mask right here, Control W, so that's going to be a poly group, so that'll help it to understand that I want edge loops right there. I'll paint a mask right here like this. Doesn't always work, but it doesn't hurt to try. ZRemesh has gotten a lot better than it used to be, so you can get a little bit lazy with the old ZRemesh. Alright, so then we'll do, let's do half. This is be like 20,000 around. Make sure everything's symmetry's on. Oh, sorry. Just trying to. So you can see, kind of, it helps. You can check and see if we got spirals. If I turn on the, I'm holding Control and Shift at the same time to get my select brush, and I'm choosing the select lasso. So this is a trick. If I have select lasso and I Control Shift click on this edge, that hides the edge loop, so you can see now I have a nice edge loop going all the way around. It's not perfect in here. You know, we got this kind of mess going on, but I don't really care about that so much. Just want to get kind of a decent topology. So that's okay. So it's not bad, you know, for now, for sculpting anyways. Let's do another ZRemesh at half. And get it down even lower. Something like this. Maybe one more. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to subdivide. Save it. Henry Cervenkas, Cervasas, Henry Cerveza. He sounds awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I could use a little bit of practice on the old hard surface thing. Let's see. SK cloth. What I'm going to do is... Now I'm going to keep mask by polygroup on. What I think I'm going to do is do an auto groups, and then merge similar groups. Okay, cool. That way I have polygroup again for each mesh here. Let's see. Is this hard surface modeling class? Is that something that, what platform does he teach on? Is that like a YouTube or Udemy or a Gumroad thing? So I'm going to thin this out a little bit and start making it look a little bit more organic, a little bit less chubby here in the center. Yeah, I probably didn't paste the link in there. Presentation of ZBrush Central as well. Yeah, they don't, for some reason, I tried doing this last week. If you paste a link into the chat in YouTube, it won't actually paste the link. The link won't show up. But if you can get to it on ZBrush Central or ArtStation or whatever, that's cool. I actually haven't posted anything on ZBrush Central in a very long time, so I've been very bad about that. Need to get back to the habit of doing that. So I like kind of like, you know, the nice thing about doing organic modeling is all these little wobbles and imperfections that I'm putting into the surface, even at this level, you know, are kind of nice, and they can add more life to it. Of course, I'm doing everything perfectly symmetrically at the moment. That's okay, but this kind of stuff that when I get into the detailing later on, will, you know, the fine detail, I can take advantage of that sort of imperfections, and it'll look kind of cool. I think what I need here is, let's make this a little bit taller. And then I'm going to go in here with SK cloth and just do this. That's too much. One thing I've been doing lately is I've been getting back into doing my daily head modeling practice. So I set a timer for like 30 minutes and sculpt a skull and do it every day. Or I sculpt a head, like a Loomis head or something like that, just focusing on the planes of the head. Or I'll if I don't have 30 minutes, I'll do a 15-minute session where I just focus on one part of the face, like the nose or the eye or something like that. You just do it every day. Don't worry if it sucks or not. It's just like practicing scales for a musician. And, you keep doing it, eventually it becomes second nature. It's never a bad idea to practice. Even the best musicians still practice their scales every day. Even the worst musicians practice no, they don't practice they don't practice at all. They're like me. When I was in school a very, very long time ago, extremely long time ago, I was a music major, and I would practice, I think the most I got up to was 7 hours a day, 7 days a week for a few semesters. I miss a day every once in a while, but rarely. When you're like a classical musician, it's like being an Olympic athlete. You can't skip. You have to practice all the time. And on top of that, I had all my regular classwork. So classes in sociology and history and all that kind of stuff, plus my music classes, music theory, music history, and so on, that kind of thing. But I had a schedule that I would follow for the most part. I would set up a timer. I use timers and metronomes all the time. This is like good practice for when you're learning ZBrush too. A timer can be your friend because it can help you to organize your practice in such a way that you don't want to practice scales until you get scales perfect, because that's never going to happen, right? It's like weightlifting. It's not like you go and lift weights until you can lift the strongest weight, right? You do a certain amount on a regular basis to build up the muscles and also your brain, your muscle memory. So the same thing with scales, same thing with ZBrush. So I would do, set a timer, do 30 minutes of arpeggios, and I do 30 minutes of scales, and then I do 30 minutes of right hand exercises or whatever, because it's classical, so there's a lot of finger picking and all that kind of stuff. And then 30 minutes of whatever else, different type of scale, chromatic scales or something like that. And then I'd take a break, do my other stuff for other classes, and then I'd come back and do another 2 hours, and I'd do half an hour on one piece, half an hour on another piece, maybe an hour on a third piece, and then so I break it up into 2 hour sessions. So 3 2 hour sessions, and then a final hour where I just work on one piece or whatever. I did that every day for a few semesters, actually. I think that was the most intense that I did it. Usually I do 5 to 6 hours a day. 7 hours is a bit extreme. But you can do ZBrush the same way. You can set aside, if you have the time, if you're delightfully unemployed or whatever, you have the time, you can say, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day on a skull, and 30 minutes a day on a hand, and then an hour working on this character, and then an hour working on an environment or whatever. Whatever time you got, just as long as you do it on a regular basis every single day, regularly, because what you're trying to do is basically improve the connections between the neurons in your brain so that a lot of this stuff becomes secondhand. And if you're doing characters and most of your human anatomy, you want it to be second nature. I don't do it that much of a regimen as I used to, because now I get interrupted with work, and you never know when a client is like, I need this and that and all that kind of thing. But there's definitely a lot of stuff that I can do without thinking, which is kind of the goal of practice. Does that make sense? How did I manage not to burn out? I burned out after a while. That's the problem. At least with music, I've never burnt out on CG. I've been doing CG now for 20 years, and I rarely get tired of it. I get tired of certain projects, which are no fun projects. I had to model some corn a couple years ago that was freaking pain in my butt. But I don't burn out. But I did burn out a bit on music, unfortunately. And, it's kind of dawned on me that I'm spending a lot of my time and effort on classical music. And how many of y'all, when's the last time you spent money to go see a classical musician play? I'm sure there's a couple of you out there, but probably not that many. So it's not a great way to make a living, but it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to learn, which is the big benefit. It's funny how people go on and on about the utility of majors and how majors are supposed to allow you to get a particular type of job and all that kind of stuff. It's like, not really. The fact that you go to school or went to college, at least back in my day, was important. It's the discipline is the most important thing that you get out of going to school, in my opinion. Because I ended up working, I've done like 3 or 4 careers now, so since then. I made a lot more money doing CG than I did classical guitar, by several orders of magnitude. Well, the other thing about going to university, and a lot of people like to knock liberal arts, but it's also astonishing how few people actually understand things like, art history or any of those kinds of things are actually much more important than we give it credit for, My biggest problem is I've slacked on reading. I used to read all the time, and I have not been reading as much lately, and that's something I really need to get back in the habit of. Because TV these days seems to be especially crap. I mean, most of the time I watch YouTube, because YouTube is great. There's some good shows and all that kind of stuff, but I need to stop watching so much TV and read more. So my favorite artist, one of my favorite authors is a guy named Ed Yong. He does a lot of science writing. He's got a really cool book out now that I really want to check out when I get a chance, on animal perception, which is one of my favorite topics. It just looks awesome. He's a really accessible reader. If you want to read some great science stuff, he's fantastic. He did I Contain Multitudes, which has a lot of bug stuff in it, but also a lot of bacteria stuff in it. That's a really good one. And then David Quammen is another favorite of mine. There's a really great book called The Song of the Dodo, that's one of those books that's just life-changing. It's so amazing. A lot of history in there about stuff you probably don't know, most people don't know about Darwin and that kind of thing, which I didn't know, and as well as some of his contemporaries like Wallace and Bates, and The Song of the Dodo is a great book because it's essentially about extinction, how extinction happens. It's a really fantastic book, but it's also kind of tragic too. But there's so many great stories in that one. That's the kind of book that you could probably come up with like 10 different movie plots just from reading it. Really cool one. And then it's also written another one. It's just Tangled Bank is a really good book. I forget who wrote that one. Arrival of the Fittest is one of the best books I've ever read on evolution. It's really fantastic. There's another one that I mentioned a couple weeks ago on animal defenses, and now I can't remember the name of it. Well, there's For the Love of Insects, which has a lot on insect chemical defenses. Some great books out there. I read a lot of nonfiction. I should read some more fiction, but you know, a lot of those fiction books, the authors are just making those stories up, you know. That's my problem with them. How can you trust them, man? That R.R. Martin guy, man, he's just making that stuff up. I read Tolkien, and my first reaction was, nuh-uh. That didn't happen. Sauron, what is this guy talking about? I like this kind of, I'm trying to kind of imitate this edge right here a little bit. You know, there's a lot of cool like micro details in here that I'm not worrying about the hair or any of this stuff just yet. That will come later. But you can see it's like I got a nice little bit of wobble in there, but not too much. From the clay tubes. So it's starting to look organic. Last thing I want to do is have this thing look manufactured. I want it to look like it's layers of chitin. Okay. Just think about these kind of cups, these segments. One of the things I'd love to do is an animation that explores how antennae actually work. That's another topic that's like, it sounds really like a straightforward topic at first, and then you dig into the literature and you realize it's like, well, the problem is that for every rule on how something works, there's a billion exceptions. And that's what I learned when I did the animations on insect vision. So I thought, okay, this is how I'm going to do an animation that explains how eyes work. And then I'm like, well, what about eyes that are nocturnal? What about eyes that are, what about ocelli? What about, you know, the difference between a dragonfly eye and a ant eye. They both use the same type ommatidia, the same kind of structure, but they're in such different configurations and they serve such different purposes that there's so many exceptions. And it's the same thing with the antenna. There's going to be a lot of exceptions to how they work, but it also is what makes it interesting. Like the antenna of an ant is going to be really different than an antenna of, say, a moth. We're talking about an ant worker because ant workers don't fly. Ant queens do, but ant males do, but ant workers don't. So that means there's probably a significant difference between the way that the antenna in a male ant works as opposed to a worker ant, even of the same species in the same nest, right? They have different goals. A male ant has only one purpose, and that is to find a virgin queen, and that's it. That's all it lives for. Making love in the sky, as opposed to a worker that has very different requirements because it goes out and forages and has to communicate with other nest mates and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a cool topic. You know, people who are into robotics and all that kind of stuff, of course, study insects a lot because they're nature's robots. Okay, we could do a little bit of a clay polish here just to see if it tightens it up a little bit. Yeah, not too bad. Okay, so that looks all right. We're going to leave it there for now, and we'll come back to adding fine detail a bit later. Now the question is did I make them too big? And I don't think so. Of course, I'm not looking with perspective. I think that looks about right. I mean, this head probably needs to be a bit longer. Mine is a bit too stout right here, I think. Hard to say. I think this needs to be brought down a little bit. But I think overall the scale of the antenna, if anything, they might be a little bit short. So let's turn off mask by polygroup. Let's go to the lowest subdivision level. Get the old move brush here. Maybe pull it out just a little bit. Keep that S curve going. Gotta have the S curve. Very subtle, but it's right there, you know. I think that looks pretty good. What I think I might do is let's go down to this guy. And I think at this point, well, let's do this. Did I? Oh, I already did a ZRemesh on this. Okay, cool. So let's do this. I don't want to disturb the eye. Don't disturb the eye, speaking of Sauron. I'm curious if there's anybody out there who's watching who's migrated completely from, say, like Maya to like Blender. They made the complete transition. You know, I think you know, it's kind of like when everybody was cutting the cord to cable. You know, I'm wondering at one point when people are gonna just start to make a transition away from spending so much money on a program like Maya and just transitioning completely to Blender or Unreal or some combination. I'd like to do it. Unfortunately, so many of my jobs require that I use Maya still that I haven't been able to make that switch. I like Maya just fine, but it is expensive, and I can't, you know, I'm a professional, so I can't monkey around with things like cracks or anything like that. I have to pay for my software. But I notice a lot of studios, or at least the smaller studios, are starting to use Blender more and more, and I'm learning it when I can, but it's like one of those things where I learn it and then I get distracted with something else, and I go back and relearn what I'd learned and learn it again. It's kind of the same with Unreal. So if anybody's ditched a major software package like Maya for Blender or Unreal, let me know. I think that'd be a very interesting thing to talk about. What the experience has been like. Basically, my goal as a CG artist right now is to migrate completely as much as possible to Unreal, so I never have to render again. That's the dream anyways. If it happens, we'll see. But or if you migrated to Unity. I know most visual effects people tend to go towards Unreal. At least that's the impression I get. But I think Unity actually has a broader user base, at least in the gaming industry, from what I understand. I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. Okay. I think that's starting to look a little bit more like our friend here. And less like a goofy Pac-Man. So what I can do now is maybe start and dialing in some detail here. Okay, interesting. Blender's UV tools are definitely not it. I've been using Maya since 1998, so for me, Maya is like deeply embedded. I've also written books on it and taught it at Gnomon for 10 years, and I did the entire Gnomon series on Maya for, I think, 2016 all the way up to 2023. And I'm actually recording a Maya Gnomon DVD for Gnomon right now. So Maya is like my bread and butter. But that being said, whereas I love ZBrush and I will continue to use ZBrush as long as it makes sense to use it. You know, probably my stylus for my cold dead hands, as the saying goes. But Maya, I'm used to it and it feels natural to me, but I don't necessarily have any abiding love for it, you know. So that's interesting. Maya's UV tools sucked for a really long time, and they've got good around 2018 or maybe 2017 when they incorporated. They basically bought one of the Maya plugins and incorporated it into the software, so it's gotten a lot better. Yeah, I'll have to play with LookDev and Unreal. I never try to render. I render. There's a difference. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I've gotten very used to, I've got a bunch of techniques for doing decent macro effects in like Redshift and Octane and all the way back to Mental Ray. So I got to figure out how to do that, transfer all that stuff into Unreal. But I know it's gotten a lot easier than it used to be, you know. I like the material editor in Unreal. Because my partner in crime, Irene, uses Razam UV a lot. She likes it a lot. It seems to be pretty cool what she showed me. Oh yeah, I use Quixel Bridge. That's some great stuff. I haven't used it in a few months, but yeah, it's a really cool program. I really love it. And I wouldn't even say I'm an expert at it, but what little I've done in it has been really impressive because it's very fast. You get really cool results. And it's actually, and I think also it's fun to use, which is a really important thing in any piece of software. And that's what makes ZBrush so great. It's like, it's fun to use, you know. Like, I find ZBrush super relaxing. And I found that with Quixel Bridge is also kind of cool like that in a similar way. Let's see, let's move this stuff around a little bit. Yeah, I used to use Hedis a lot back in the day. It was pretty good. But once Maya finally got some decent UV tools, so that's what I mostly use. But like I say, I dream of the day where I can kind of ditch my Maya license and use different tools that are a bit more affordable. We'll see if that actually ever happens. Is anybody out there still using Modo or anything like that? I have a friend, I think he's still using Lightwave. I can't believe that. I was a big Lightwave user for a while. Way back, way back. Okay, I got some issues down here I gotta fix. I was thinking about Softimage the other day. You guys remember that? That was the big software they used on Episode 1, Star Wars. Anybody remember that? We can hear the fireworks. This is that time of year when everybody starts to blow things up. I'm scaring my dogs. I have a personality test question for people out there. This is mostly for Americans. Which is a better holiday, Halloween or 4th of July? For me, it's definitely Halloween. 4th of July is a nightmare for anybody who has dogs because of all the fireworks. Oh my God, Jesse McAllister, what's going on, man? Softimage. Hey, what's going on, Ozzy? Ozzy. The thing I don't like about Blender cycles is, for me personally, it makes the texturing process a lot more difficult because the material response deviates so much. That's interesting. That's good to know. I mean, I know a lot of people like cycles, but I've only heard from people who like cycles, so it's nice to hear somebody offer a bit of a critique, especially because I tend to use, I like Substance a lot as well. Substance or Marmoset. Have I sculpted in VR? I played with it a little bit. My arms got tired. That was the problem. I like sitting down. I got to get back into it because I think when the last time I tried it, the tools were still fairly new. So I haven't tried it in a while. I have like the Meta Quest sitting somewhere in the background there that I need to fire up. So I'd be curious if there is if there's a VR sculpting program that you like. Let me know because that'd be interesting to try out. I can't remember what the drawing program that was everybody loved when it first came out. But the cool thing about doing like the 3D drawing is I just like how they make the brushes make sound effects. I thought that's really cool. Also, when you have that kind of the force feedback, it gives it kind of an interesting experience. I know it's like a massive waste of resources, but for just a fun drawing program, it's kind of hysterical. I kind of wish they would incorporate sound effects in like ZBrush brushes or Photoshop brushes. I think that'd be hysterical. Or I don't know, Procreate or whatever. I don't know. Do they do that in Procreate? I haven't used Procreate in a while either. It's just a lot of software out there that you don't have time to learn to use. It's just kind of funny. It's like when I was a guitar player, when I was younger, I was always broke. Never had any money, so for me, like a guitar and an amp was pretty much all I could afford. So I could never buy like 1,000,000 foot pedals or anything. I always had the friends who had like the rich parents, and they have like dozens of foot pedals, and every foot pedal would do something different and make them sound amazing, even though they didn't know how to play guitar. So I put my energy into learning guitar as best as I could. I'm not saying that I'm a great guitarist. I am not by any means, but I was decent, competent. Let's say competent. I'll go with competent. And that was just and it's kind of the same thing with CG. I just don't always have the time to learn a billion different programs, so I try and get the most out of whatever programs I can. That's why, whenever I do poly painting, somebody always asks me why I don't do it in Substance. And I do painting in Substance and everything, but it's mainly because I've been doing ZBrush since before Substance was around, or before Mari was around, so that was the best way for me to do texturing, and I'm just used to doing it that way. At least for things like painting like an albedo or a color map, base map, anything like specular roughness and etc. Usually the maps that I paint in ZBrush are color maps and displacement maps. I export the displacement maps, and that's usually everything else I do in Substance or Marmoset. Speaking of which, it's time to do a shameless plug. So you go to the Noma Workshop. I have a bunch of DVDs available. Insect-related stuff and non-insect related stuff. So this one is an orchid mantis from beginning to in ZBrush, all the way from the very beginning block out, and there's some stuff on mantis anatomy, all the way to texturing and rendering in Marmoset. I just did Marmoset in this one because I thought it'd be fun to do one in Marmoset. I also have Jumping Spider, again, all the way from beginning to final render. This is rendered in Redshift, and I'm using Yeti for the fur, so if you're curious about that, that's a fun one. And then I have my original hyper-realistic insect modeling. I think this one was rendered in Octane, but you could do the same thing in this is Octane for Maya 2018, so this is fairly old, but you could do the same thing in Redshift. Most of it takes place in ZBrush, and I think also Substance. And then I have my series on Maya, 3 DVDs on Maya 2023 in 3 different volumes, and a very old one on UV Toolkit and Maya, which I'm in the process of updating right now. So that's my little plug. Check out the stuff on the Gnomon Workshop. And then, of course, you can also check out my website, bluepatone.com. Jewelry design, portfolio, demo reel, etc. If you're curious, I'm going to start selling more resources on ArtStation, and I also have some courses on Udemy. So let me see. Several courses on Udemy, ZBrush for jewelry designers, ZBrush demystifying ZBrush materials. So this is a new one, just came out. Talk about standard materials, matte cap materials, redshift materials, how to use them, all the various material settings in ZBrush, if you're curious about that. And I also have ZBrush for jewelry designers, understanding ZBrush geometry. So what's the difference between Dynamesh, Nanomesh, subdivision surfaces, ZRemesher, all those, decimation, all those kinds of things. It has a different chapter for each piece of geometry. And these are for basically, it's for jewelry designers, but it's really targeted towards ZBrush beginners, especially people who are interested in printing stuff from ZBrush. This one is the fundamentals, so this is for absolute beginners, but it's fairly comprehensive. It's got, I don't know how many chapters. Yeah, like 15 chapters there, so check it out if you're curious. There you go. That's my plug for the evening. Thank you for indulging me, and now back to our regularly scheduled babbling. Okay, so this is the stuff that is these little folds and stuff like this. This is the good stuff. I'm just gonna kind of, right now I realize I'm doing everything kind of perfectly symmetrical, which I'll do that for a while until I get to the fine detailing stage, and then I'll go and start making things asymmetrical. I consider this to be, what I'm doing now, to be secondary detail, not tertiary detail. So just kind of getting some lumps going and some interesting kind of folds in there. Make it look nice and organic. And then there's sirens in the background. Probably somebody blew their hand off with the fireworks, so it happens a lot around here. I can only imagine what it's like to work in an emergency room in Los Angeles during fireworks season. Probably like picking up spare fingers off the ground and stuff like that. If you're studying hand anatomy, maybe you should go check out an emergency room around this time of year. Probably find some spare fingers. They might be a little burnt, might be a little shriveled, but you can take them home, use them for reference. Why not? Yeah, I really like Redshift a lot. So, full disclosure, I was a huge Octane fan, and I did end up getting a job. I worked for Otoy for about 18 months. They're the company that makes Octane, and they're here in LA. And it was a fun job and everything, but after I left that job, I kind of switched over to Redshift, and I found that Redshift, it's, no rendering engine is perfect, and people are gonna be like, yeah, Redshift's good, except if you really want to do hyper realistic skin, and then maybe V-Ray is better, or whatever. And I like Arnold too as well, but Redshift is just my jam because it's a perfect balance of easy, fast, but also powerful. powerful enough that you can get some really nice looking renders out of it. And if you're a Maya user or whatever you use, it integrates really well into the software. The Redshift that's available for a ZBrush, it's like when you install Redshift, it installs a copy of Redshift for whatever Redshift's software you have on your machine. So Maya, Cinema 4D, ZBrush, or whatever. I believe it's the same license, but the Redshift that you use in Maya is kind of limited only because, I mean, sorry, not Maya, in ZBrush, it's limited because, well, it's ZBrush, and ZBrush is a very different animal than Maya. You don't have node-based editing in ZBrush. So while there are some limitations, Redshift for ZBrush is great because you can get some nice renders out quickly without having to export to another program. You don't necessarily need to set up UVs and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's using your polypaint excuse me, polypaint data. You know, you're a bit more limited in terms of the lighting and all that kind of stuff, but it's still pretty cool. But overall, I'm a big Redshift fan. That's what I've been using regularly for the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. Now, if we take a look, I think when we do the final render, that'll look pretty good. I mean, it looks weird now because it's a different material. But when you get hair on and all this little, I love it. This is the stuff that gets me really excited. This kind of detail. That's, for me, this is like, everything I'm doing right now is like eating your vegetables. And then when you get to this detail, that's the dessert, man. That's what I live for. I'm addicted to detail. I think that's, well, it's not. I can't make that generalization because there's plenty of people who do really cool stylized stuff like Shane Olson and ZBrush. They're not necessarily super detailed. Oh, that also reminds me, how many people out there are going to Monsterpalooza? I will be there on Sunday. So if you're there on Sunday in Monsterpalooza in Pasadena, I'll be wearing my Bluepatone shirt. So if you see me, come and say hello. It's always fun to meet people in person. And if you haven't been to Monsterpalooza, I don't know if it's sold out, but it's a lot of fun. You know, and this area is so much covered with fur that we kind of have to invent a little bit of detail. And then, you know, for this one, for the final, you know, what I did for the Wasp, my last live stream project, is I did the fur with fiber mesh, and I just rendered everything in Redshift here in ZBrush. I might do that for this one as well. But this model, if it comes out well, which I hope it does, I'll probably end up rigging and rendering in Maya. And then I'll use something like Yeti or XGen for fur. The other thing is I haven't really learned XGen well enough. I played with it a long time ago when XGen was fairly new, and it was super buggy, and just, you know, everybody I talked to was just like, yeah, it doesn't really work as advertised. And that was a long time ago, so I kind of got frustrated with it, and when Yeti came out, I really got into that, because Yeti is like, it's a pain to install, because you have to, you know, it's not an easy installation, but it's so nice to use. Like, the grooming tools are really fantastic. It plays nicely with Redshift and other renderers. It does nice feathers, and I just really like it. But like, every time you upgrade Redshift, you have to go in and configure like global variables and stuff like that. It's kind of annoying. It does, I mean, it's not, you know, 5 minutes worth of work, but for a lazy person, it's kind of annoying. But I think that the thing that I like about Yeti the most is the grooming tools. It's just the brushes behave like you want them to behave. And it's something with fiber mesh and ZBrush kind of drives me a little bit crazy. It's like you work on a section. I mean, there's techniques, you know, like polygroups and all that kind of stuff that you can use. But I still find it a little bit like I just want to brush hair like naturally. And I find Yeti's really good for that. Houdini, huh? Yeah, the problem with Houdini is it's a huge program to learn, so you know, the nice thing about Yeti is you can do it all in Maya. Like I've taken Houdini classes way back in the day and stuff like that, but Houdini is like Japanese. I'd love to be able to speak Japanese, but I do not have the time to learn it. You know, and it's like I'd love to learn Houdini, but wow, massive time sink among all the other stuff I got to do. So I don't know. Maybe at some point. And it's kind of like Bifrost in Maya. It seems really cool, but when am I going to actually learn how to use it in a way that is actually functional? Yeah, so it looks like it's kind of hard to see because of the depth of field here, but looks like we have kind of a thickness there. I've noticed, I've said this before, but it's still true, a lot of filming projects going on in my neighborhood here in Eagle Rock. So I think that's a good sign that industry will hopefully come out of its slump sometime soon. I've been getting a lot more work lately, which is good. But wow, it was a real drought for a while there. And I also noticed I had some friends a friend who just got a job at Bungie, which is cool. He was looking for a long time, getting kind of really discouraged, and then he just got a new job, so congratulations to him. So that's cool. So hopefully we're heading into busy season once again. And it was only a couple years ago, right before the strike, where I was like doing at least 2 full-time jobs at the same time, which was hectic and stressful, but also very pleasant for the old bank account, you know. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty cool. I mean, it's fun. It's too symmetrical by way too much, but that's okay. Like I said, I'm going to unsymmetrize it later on. I mean, like I mentioned before, I mean, this is the part that I can't wait for, is poly painting the back here. That's the other thing I like about Yeti. It's very easy to transfer these color maps. I think it's for most grooming tools, but for Yeti, I know for a fact it's very easy to transfer these color maps into the color of the fur. And this is going to be really nice. But you can see it's quite symmetrical. Not perfectly symmetrical, but very, very close, you know. These designs here. It'd be interesting. I mean, I just had this one Longhorn Beetle. It'd be interesting to find more of this species and see how consistent the pattern is from one individual to the next. Because in some insects, like if you look at a blue morpho butterfly, they always have the same white dots in the same place on the top side of the wings. And then the pattern, the bottom side of the wing is a completely different color than the top side of the wing. The pattern's fairly consistent. But it'd be interesting to see how consistent this is from one bug to the next, one individual to the next. That's just, to me, is just such a marvel of evolution. I love it. Bilateral symmetry, so it's a cool topic. Oh yeah, I'm gonna get into this detail. We have, it's somewhat symmetrical. Divot here, slight divot there, a little bit there. Got like this kind of thing going on. Let me make sure I get that. One of my favorite brushes is this. This is one of Sakaki's brushes, the clay fill. This one's just a wonderful brush. Filling in the spots, kind of changing my mind on some of these details here because I think I went a little too extreme. That's okay. It's a very nice soft brush. Kind of a nice way to knock back some of that detail. The other thing, of course, is this material tends to exaggerate detail quite a bit. That's why I like it. Yeah, that's kind of nice. I should save this. Yeah, it's tough right now because we're just going through a big upheaval in terms of technology and the way studios are working and the way that what they're making. I mean, the way we consume entertainment has shifted so much in the past 5 years. And just not just in terms of like who's going to theaters, but how we watch TV. Right now these days, I watch YouTube primarily as the first thing that I turn on, and then I occasionally watch, if there's something on a streaming service, Dune 2 or a movie I want to watch or something like that, I'll turn to Netflix or HBO or something like that. But I very rarely, network, I don't watch networks. And of course, all these subscription services are irritating as hell. So everything is changing, and nobody quite knows what to make of it, I think, right now. All the people in charge of the studios are guessing right now. So I think they're a little bit reluctant to get things going, or at least they're in the process of changing the way that stuff is made. And as much as it's annoying and it's no fun, you gotta adapt. You gotta roll with it. It's the only choice that you have if you want to survive in doing the creative stuff. So it means changing the way that we work and just dealing with it. So what I had in the past few months was a lot of people approaching me to do a project and then putting me on hold or whatever, and then the project just fizzles. Nothing happens. I never hear from the person again. That's something that really irritates me about being freelance. When a studio like calls you up and they're like, I want to put you on hold, so that means that, you know, in the month of June, if you get another job offer, you got to come to me first. I go, all right. I always say yes, but I never actually do it. I don't care. I'm like, if somebody comes to me with a job and they want to pay me for something, I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to go and run to you and ask for permission. But the thing is that these same people, every single time, they want to put you on hold. They want you to swear that you're going to talk to them before you take another job. And then their job doesn't happen, and you never hear from them again. They never call you up and say, hey, listen, man, I'm sorry, but the job didn't happen. The client changed their mind, blah, blah, blah. Nope. You just never hear from them. You're like, dude, you want me to, like, call you up and ask you permission to work on another job, and you don't have the common courtesy to... does it sound like I'm ranting, by the way? Because I think I might be ranting. You don't have the common courtesy to come and tell me that the job got killed? It's like, geez, that's so typical. But, you know... whatever. You ain't let it get you down, man. It's just the stress talking. I don't know. Yeah, 70. I have a lot of. Well, you know, ZBrush does do a lot of swapping with the hard drive, so I don't know if that's entirely RAM. It's also free space in the hard drive, so. Well, I'm glad you're looking at some amazing artwork from Thailand. Cool. Thailand's awesome. I love Thai food. I love the drunken noodles. My favorite. I can crash ZBrush. I'm very good at that. I'm an expert. I should teach a course in how to crash ZBrush. We all are good at crashing ZBrush. This model right now, though, isn't very heavy. Like, the total number of points is 15 million because I'm still in the blockout phase. Typically, I'll get a model up to, like, if you're looking at all the points at the highest subdivision level, 180, 22 million, 200 million points is not unusual. But, you know, ZBrush is so weird because you can, you know, if I have one subtool at, you know, 200 million, that could be a problem. But if you have 15 subtools and the total number is 200 million, it's not really that big a problem. That's also why it's good to always, at a certain point, make sure your model has lower levels of subdivision, because as you notice, I mean, this is for people who are new to ZBrush. You expert users probably know this already, but you notice as I'm rotating the model how it temporarily shifts to a lower subdivision, and then when I let go, it pops back up to the current subdivision level. So in this case, subdivision level 5. And this is a great memory saving feature. So if you have a lot of subtools and they don't have lower levels of subdivision, so maybe you're using a lot of Dynamesh or Sculptress, or you just haven't created subdivision levels, that's when you run the real risk of crashing ZBrush, because you don't give it that room at the bottom to shift down when you're interacting with the rest of the model. If that makes sense. So. Bottom line is, it's not a bad idea to ZRemesh your models and have lower levels of subdivision, even if you plan to retopologize again later on, which I often do. You know, I think the head looks okay for now. I'm going to leave it there. I got about 12 minutes left in this live stream, so let's see. I think this right here will probably be the next thing that I want to work on because it looks fun. So I think that's probably a good idea to... I think this is in a pretty good spot, so I could try Z-remeshing it. So let's do this. And the way the polygroups are organized right now, let's do this. Make a polygroup here. Make a polygroup here. Make a polygroup here. And for this little thing, so speaking of Thailand, this looks like something you'd see in a sculpture from Thailand. This kind of design. I don't know. I'm making that up. I'd love to go to Thailand. They have great bugs in Thailand. Also Singapore. Singapore has the best bugs. I follow a photographer named Nicky Bay, and I've known him. I've actually taken some courses from him. Really wonderful, wonderful guy. But he lives in Singapore, and he goes out in the field, probably told me, and he has kids, so keep that in mind. It's 6 to 8 hours a week just going out there and doing macro photography of bugs. And it shows in his work, you know. He's one of my favorite artists. Nicky Bay. Did I say his name? Hopefully I did. Nicky Bay. All right, so I got some polygroups here, just real quick. I'm going to go in here to, let's store this state history. Let's go to ZRemesh. I'm going to turn on keep groups. Whoops, not freeze groups, but keep groups. And let's just do a ZRemesh adaptive, and I'll say, I think 15,000. See how that, whoops. There we go. That's okay. It works pretty well. Let's set this to half. Okay, so you can see I got an error there when I was ZRemeshing. This is another note to people who might be new to ZBrush. So I tried to ZRemesh, I get an error, it won't let me do it. So what do? Go down here in the geometry subpalette of the tool palette. So tool palette, geometry, towards the bottom, mesh integrity, fix mesh. It's fixed. Go back up here, ZRemesh, try again, and it works. So just a super quick tip. And there we see 5,000 polygons. That's probably good. I'll go in here, subtool. Since I stored that history state, I'll do project history, Control D to subdivide, project history, Control D, subdivide, project history. Yeah, let's get it up to subdivide again, Control D to subdivide. So right now 1.3 million is plenty for this stage of development, because I'm just kind of working on the sort of the secondary detail now, not the fine detail. So I think 1 million is fine, and maybe I'll subdivide it again later, or I might retopologize it again, depending on how I feel. So hopefully that makes some sense. Let's do a quick clay polish. I like clay polish, do it every once in a while, just to tighten everything up. It's kind of subtle in this case, but there you go. And let's do a save next. So Saul, you're a taxi driver according to your name. I have a twin brother named Travis. Speaking of taxi driver, he told me that he just started following Jodie Foster on Facebook simply because he noticed that she didn't have any followers named Travis, and he thought that would be a good thing. He's kind of got a dark sense of humor. Did anybody prophesize these people? Only Travis. Okay, I'll probably look at some reference while I'm doing this, right? Otherwise I'm just making stuff up. So there we go. This is let's make sure we're looking at the right part and also the right angle. And there we go. Ah, this is such beautiful detail. Look at this. This could be a bit more subtle. And then we'll do more of an arc. The brush I'm using right now is SK Cloth. It's another of Sakaki's brushes. He does a live stream. I highly recommend watching it. He does more like anime style characters, stylized characters. But as I mentioned before, and I just mentioned this again in case you're curious, if you go to his Gumroad, he has a whole set of brushes, several sets of brushes that I absolutely love. Kind of can't live without them. So I highly recommend checking out his brushes. They're also they're free. He just asks for a donation if you feel like giving him some money. But it's called an SK Cloth brush because it's really good at making like cloth folds and that kind of stuff. I use it as my main drawing brush as opposed to like damn standard. So I don't necessarily use it for cloth, but I just like the way that it works on the surface. So I recommend checking out his brushes and his live stream. I probably overdone that a little bit, so that's where the SK Cloth Clay Fill comes in. Clay Phil sounds like a nickname for somebody named Phil. When I first moved to LA, I was always wondering, I kept seeing signs for LA Phil. I'm like, who is this LA Phil, man? Why is he so popular? That's a classical music joke, I guess. Saw the Taxi Driver. I had that exact thing happen to me. Okay, it's like it was for the movie Beekeeper that just came out. Jason Statham, and I was working with Filmograph. I love Filmograph. I do a lot of work with them. They do a lot of titles and everything. But they did the titles for Beekeeper, and I'm like, dude, bees are my favorite animal, and I have some really nice bee models that I've worked on for a long time. And that's exactly what happened. I gave them the bee. Most of the title sequence was actual footage, and they used my bees, and it was far away, and it was not even a full second. It was like half a second. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. Yes, you're absolutely right. That definitely happened to me. It's happened to me in a lot of things. But, as the saying goes, that's showbiz. I did like the spider that I did for Wednesday and the fly. That was a lot of fun. If you're curious, I'm going to do a quick plug here before I wrap things up for my YouTube channel. If you want to check it out, Bloopatone. I have a bunch of videos. Guess what? They're insect related. Not all of them, but some of them. I have a breakdown of the stuff I did for the Wednesday title. If you want to check that out. Plus, some time lapse, a few shorts. I'm adding more shorts when I can. And then some longer time lapse. This Amblypygid model was a lot of fun to work on. And I have some more that I'm going to be adding to this channel soon when I get a chance. So check out my YouTube channel. Subscribe, like and subscribe, please. I'd appreciate it. And there you go. So I think I'm going to wrap this up for tonight. And I want to thank everybody that followed along. This project that I'm working on right now, I'm doing specifically just for the live stream. So it's a personal project, but I'm doing it for the live stream. So I've been doing Thursdays. This month I'm doing Thursdays, 7:30, 9:30 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to continue to work on this project. You can check out the previous live streams if you want to see how this started. I started from scratch, and then you can also check out the previous project which I did, which was more of an original concept wasp, which came out pretty well, I think. And then just follow me every Thursday, and I usually post on my LinkedIn. You just look for me, Eric Keller, on LinkedIn or on my Instagram. My Instagram is @bluepatone. It's down here at the bottom of my live stream right here. Follow me on Instagram. I usually post, I forgot to this week, but I usually post an update on when I'm going to be doing my live stream so that you can plan ahead a couple days in advance. If you can, if you miss it, remember ZBrush posts all the live streams so you can watch them later. And there's a lot of great ones up there. Ashley Adams, one of my favorites. Ian Robinson, Ara, Kermiko, good stuff. A lot of great live streams out there to watch. So check them all out. Why go to work? Just sit at home and watch live streams all day long. Why not? And I'll see you guys next week. And thanks a lot for hanging out with me and listening to me ramble. Hopefully I didn't say anything too stupid. Hopefully I said things that are just stupid enough. That's what I usually shoot for. And I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.